Hi, I'm Mushiri. Welcome to Let's Talk Data. This is the Maputo Protocol edition, and we've been talking to voices that have been very active in the gender movement in Africa for a long time. One of the things that we're hoping to learn from them is what's been the journey for Africa moving forward the women's rights agenda, the equality agenda, the empowerment agenda, so that we have a better life for everybody. And today I'm joined by Nebila Abdulmelik, poet, creative, storyteller extraordinaire, if I may say so myself, and I do. Welcome, Nebila.
Thank you so much, Mushiri. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm delighted. One of the things that I always wonder is how a creative communicator, an amazing storyteller, ended up working in the women's rights movement. So yeah, let's start there. How did you end up here?
So two of my foremost identities, I mean, obviously we have multiple identities that we live with and breathe with and walk with every day, but I would define myself as a Pan-Africanist and as a feminist. So when the opportunity to work with one of the largest and oldest Pan-African women's rights organizations, FEMNET, came, I jumped on it. I mean, I was excited. I thought this is a way of working on issues that I'm passionate about and not make it a side hustle or something I do in my spare time, but make it something I wake up to do on a daily basis. So at the time I was living in Harare, so I moved to Nairobi and started working with FEMNET and started off with advocacy. And one of the great things about working with FEMNET is that it's a Pan-African membership-based organization. So you're working with women that are doing incredible things all across the continent. So women working on land rights, other women working on issues of female genital mutilation, others working on violence, countering violence against women and girls. So also the diversity of issues that the organizations and individual members were working on were really, I don't want to say fascinating, but it's incredible to see a network, a movement, a coalition of women's rights activists, organizations, individuals who are making moves within their local and national spheres, and it builds up at regional and continental levels to push agendas forward.
What kind of issues, what kind of work were you doing in Harare?
In Harare, I mean, I had just graduated. I had just gotten my master's, so I was moving back to the continent, and I was looking for work, and I was asking people to bring me on board, even on a voluntary basis. So it was difficult, to be honest. A lot of people are not open to it. They're not willing to give you the time of day to even see what value you bring to the table or to the organization. So I used that time to really get engaged in the creative scene. I was very much engaged with the poetic scene, so doing slams, attending creative events, engaging with the Zim creative scene. We even founded a collective, it was called the Zim Collective, and we had an idea to do an anthology of poetry, but bringing together various voices that were based in Harare at the time. But also doing a bit of volunteer work with the World Food Programme.
Wow, that sounds like an interesting time, and I'm sure some of what you spent a lot of time doing in Harare with the poetry and the creative scene there came in handy at FEMNET.
It did. I think something that I'm learning now is to bring all of me wherever I am. So what that means is when you're in a space, in a CSO space or in a space like the AU, sometimes you forget that creative side of you, or you feel like it's not something that you can bring to the organization. It's something that you do after hours. But to be honest, I think it would kind of bleed in at certain points. When people would invite me for meetings and invite me to speak, I'd start with a poem. And I think it was a way of telling people that there are multiple ways to push our work forward, that the kind of language that we use, the methods that we use don't have to be dry and boring and just be hidden in a report that very few people read, that we can put forward our ideas in a creative manner, and we can reach out to people in many ways, because things that speak to us in different mediums, through different mediums. Some people appreciate poetry, some people appreciate music, some appreciate film, some theater.
Some like me appreciate food.
Yes, you know, there you go, there you go. So just trying to diversify the ways in which we communicate. But I think also part of asserting who I am into the spaces where I engage.
All right. And then I know you were at FEMNET for a while, did a lot of great work there. I had the privilege of a front row seat. And then you moved on to the African Union.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was tough, to be honest. It was tough on a number of levels. One, because I moved from a very non-hierarchical institution or organization to what I can say is a huge monster, in the sense that it's a multilateral institution that brings together various interests, and it's supposed to bring together the 54 now 55 states that make up the African continent. So, I mean, in a way, it makes you appreciate how difficult the work of the AU is, why things don't move as quickly as we want them to move when you're outside. On the other hand, I think the bureaucracy, the hierarchy, the protocol was really difficult to get to learn and almost to get used to. Again, particularly coming from an organization like FEMNET, where you have an idea, you have a director who believes in you, who believes in your capabilities and your politics, and allows you to run with your ideas and allows you to innovate and implement new projects, and doesn't ask you why you want to go on the streets to lend your support to something like My Dress, My Choice, or why you've started a campaign on Justice for Liz, or why you're organizing solidarity amongst other African women and beyond for Bring Back Our Girls. It's because there's an understanding that it's part of our work, whether or not it's something that has been in our strategic plan, it's something that pushes our general agenda forward. It's something that advances the rights of women and girls. I think at the AU, we're a bit more rigid. We're a bit more rigid in the ways in which we work. And for a creative, it's a bit difficult. So I think the two institutions are starkly different, the ways in which they work, the politics that drives them, the people, the diversity of voices that you have to listen to and build consensus, I think, is completely different. And I think, to be honest, it allows you to appreciate the difficulties of working in a space like the African Union. And it's not to say that the EU is any different or
the UN.
Exactly. I think because it brings together a variety of interests, and in order to marry all of those interests into one place and move forward is a difficult task. It's so I think getting into the AU with all of my frustrations, one of the things I left with is an appreciation for the ways in which things work, and that sometimes things cannot move as fast as we'd like them to move. But of course, there's a lot that can be done in order to make the work easier, to motivate the people that are behind their desks, to really push some of these agendas, and an appreciation also for the enormous amount of work that we have ahead of us as a continent, and the variety of issues that we need to address in order for us to achieve the aspirations that were laid out in Agenda 2063, for example.
Yeah. Okay. So I'd like us to talk a little bit about your experience when you came into the space working on the women's rights agenda in Africa. But we'll do that when we come back after the break.